There you go, Tim.
Thanks, Sydney. Welcome, everyone. I think we wanted to start off today's circle in a good way. And Nathan, I think from Timmins, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure, is going to has graciously offered to get us started. So Nathan, I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. I'm just going to fix up my microphone input level here. I've sang songs for virtual things before, but it keeps cutting out only because of the sound input. I'm just going to turn it down for a minute. It's going to sound like I'm talking quiet, but there's a reason for that. Does it sound like I'm talking a little bit more quiet now, like a little harder to hear? Okay, yes. Perfect. So I'm going to be yelling at the mic just for a minute, but and then I'm going to be screaming at the mic. You'll understand. All right. So I was asked to sing an opening song today for this wonderful gathering that we're doing here. Normally, I don't really think hard about what songs I'm going to sing. It just kind of comes out the way it has to. But I think I'm just going to sing a simple, not simple, but like we call it the welcoming song. It's one of the Ojibwe traditional songs, and it's a welcoming song. Now, there's no words in this song, so a lot of our songs we have more feelings than talking. So we speak with our emotions and our feelings quite a lot. So a lot of our songs don't talk the words in it, and this is one of those songs. So when I sing this song, I'm pretty much greeting everybody and praying for that we have that good and special time with each other, so that everything goes well. And if things happen, that they get resolved and solved in a safe and well-timed manner. So whenever I sing these songs, I always think about everybody that's in the group, and as well as those that aren't in the group, to pray for those people who have a great day or a great whatever we're doing. So that's this is the welcoming song. And if it cuts out, I'm sorry. But once I start singing, I can't really stop singing midway through. But here we go. Lose my voice. Here, I'm gonna turn my thing back up there before I forget.
I love that, Nathan, how just as you were finishing, like a wisp of smoke came in up over the top, like we were talking about before everybody came on. But I know you were smudging and you are smudging throughout, but it's kind of cool.
Thank you. That's how majestic I am.
Nice. And Sydney, I don't know if you want to do some housekeeping stuff before we get into the conversation.
Yes, thanks, Tim. That would be great. I am going to be putting a link in the chat in a moment for a whiteboard for our event where we can have some interaction, and we also have a contest. But first, I'm going to just share on my screen and give you a quick tour of the whiteboard so that you can get a sense of what we've got going on here. And so here we go, share screen. All right, so, you know, if you've come to some network events lately, you're probably getting more and more familiar with the whiteboard that we like to use, an app called Mural. And at the left, you've got, you know, information about the event, including a link to our event survey, which I will also put in the chat. One thing I like to say is that it's handy to know how to zoom in and out. And there's a couple of ways to do that. One is if you've got a wheel on your mouse, you can zoom in and you can zoom out, which is a handy thing to know. And the second, at the bottom right, there's a little map of the board that also there's a zoom in and out function on it as well. So just to take a quick tour of what we got, if you are feeling so inclined, you can put your name on one of these little circle stickies here just by clicking on it and typing. You can make it a little bigger by dragging on the corner. And then you could put it on this map of Ontario. And I'm going to put mine down by Kitchener, even though I'm living in British Columbia. The organization I work for is in Kitchener. So I invite you to do that. We are also curious about, you know, what role you play in the CAPC or CPNP project that you work for. So we invite you to come here and grab one of these little stars and put it on the sticky note that maybe best describes your role. I'll put mine right there. Or, you know, if this doesn't capture your role, you could click on a sticky note and type, you know, whatever you like. So my role is just that I'm awesome, right? We also have another poll over here that, you know, you could tell us about your project and the work that you do in father programming. You could tell us yes or no whether your project offers father-focused programming, or if you want to say a little bit more, you could certainly add some information on these blue sticky notes. You can move sticky notes around, you can make them bigger, smaller. Feel free to do that. And finally, we do have some prizes to give away today. We're giving away some copies of Dad Central's Dad Manual. And so I believe we're going to give away 4 copies, and 3 of them are available to win at our gift tournament here at the bottom right on the board. And the invitation is for you to choose one of these dad favorite sayings that we've got here and use that as an inspiration to add an image or a GIF. And then we will have our panelists choose the top 3 each to win a copy of the Dad Central Dad's Manual. How you do that is you go over to the left and you can see there's a menu bar here. and I'm going to go down to images. And if I click on that, a search bar comes up, and I go up and I choose Giphy, and I type in whatever it is I'm searching for, and a whole bunch of options show up, and then you click on it and drag it all the way over to where you want it to be on the board. So have some fun, play around with that. And if you have any questions, maybe feel you could message me here on the Zoom chat, and I'll do my best to help you. Any questions before I hand it back to Tim to start the conversation? I will say that it does work best on Google Chrome. And if it's just not working for you, feel free to add your participation in the chat or send me a message and I will add in what you would like to say on the board. And I will share the link now and hand things over back to Tim, and I'll be quiet. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Sydney. And if you have trouble on that thing, so do I. I'm looking at it, I'm like, you try to put a sticky note, just not my forte, I guess. But it is a cool tool that, you know, for those of you who navigate it well, awesome. And if you can't, like Sydney said, just you can put something in the chat. So welcome everybody, and it's great to be discussing fathers, father figures, involving dads and men in the lives of children, which ultimately to me make it simple. We all want the children to be better off for them, but also for our future. So discussing from a personal side, but also from a professional side. And I should acknowledge too, this conversation, which is our second year doing this, really came to being because Sydney and Blanca had a conversation, two women on the call that said, hey, this would be great. It was a good idea. So I think, you know, you need to acknowledge and appreciate that, you know, it doesn't really matter who the initiative is from, but it's interesting that those women in our lives help to provide that role. And I thank them for getting us into this conversation. So Dave, Jason, Drew, Nathan, our panelists, I don't know if we even said we were going to do a little round table to say, hi, my name is Tim. I work at the Public Health Agency. I have two incredible kids. One guy just graduated university, incredibly proud of him, and the other guy's going to university as well. And love them, love my wife. I don't know. I think we should go around the horn though, maybe just to sort of introduce ourselves quick. Jason, you're unmuted, so why don't you go?
Hi, I'm Jason Brock. I'm with the Peterborough Child and Family Centers here in Peterborough. I have 4 children. There are 2 boys who are 28 and 26, as well as 2 girls who are 10 and 14. So I've experienced quite a lot of different experiences with being a dad, you know, from being a very young dad, a teen dad, to a non-custodial dad, to blended families. So I take every opportunity I can to kind of share those experiences. I also have 4 grandchildren as well. So yeah, very excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Dave, why don't we go over to you?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. My name is Dave Elder. I'm a dad as well. My daughters are 13 and soon to be 16, hard to believe. I'm a public health nurse with Ottawa Public Health, been with OPH since 2005, I believe. All of that time has been spent on working with families as part of the family health program, most recently doing high-risk home visiting, group facilitation, working within the hospital postpartum units as a liaison, connecting with families at that level as well. I've also done a lot of community capacity building around promoting father-inclusive practice at the community level. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Dave. Why don't we go over to Drew?
All right, thanks, Tim. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Great to be here. My name is Drew Saul. I'm the director for Dad Central Ontario. I've been in that role since about November 2019. Prior to that, I'd started my own coaching and training business, Connected Dads, really focused on just helping dads show up at the best they could for their families. And I am a dad. I've got twin 9-year-old daughters and a 6-year-old son. but I'm also in a little bit of a transition. I'm now a separated single dad as well, and going through some interesting experiences as I navigate that scenario.
Thanks, Drew. And we did hear him drumming. We did hear him singing already. But Nathan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, thank you very much. My name is Nathan Naview. I'm the Cultural Resource Coordinator here at Timmins Native Friendship Center. I've been working here for the past 2.5, this September will be 3 years. I have one child. Her name is Amber. She's going to be 3 years old in September. Time really does fly. I didn't believe it until I had my own child, but time does fly. I've lived in Timmins for the past 10 years. Before that, I've pretty much grew up on a reserve. It's a very small little reserve with both my parents. And being a father really, really opened up my eyes quite a lot to a lot of new and cool things, as well as the small, scary things in life. The things that I forgot are actually scary. This is my child. Yeah, and she's just like me. She's a little wild. At times, she's, I shouldn't say at times, she's pretty wild all the time, like myself. Very high energy. I'm very happy and excited that I was asked to be a part of the panel this year, and very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Happy to have you, Nathan. And somebody in the chat said, I think it was Lee Gibson, who's very famous in our world, said that you were a little hard to hear. So maybe when you came off the drumming, maybe you can crank yourself up a little bit just for the next portion. I didn't want to interrupt you, but and having said that, why don't we jump into questions? We do have questions, and I know oddly we will talk a lot without even being prompted, but just to keep things sort of in order, why don't I jump to the first question, which is, what did your father teach you that you appreciate? And as a part two, what do you wish he would have taught you? And I'm trying to think of the order. Why don't we, I think I did Jason first in the intros. Why don't we go back to Jason to keep the order going?
I think for me, my father was not a positive relationship. He was very abusive, very angry. So that in and of itself taught me the things that I didn't want to be with my parenting. But on a more positive note, I had about a grandparent, so a grandfather and uncles who were the positive male role models in my life. And I think that in and of itself taught me, it kind of makes me think of the takes a village to raise a child kind of scenario. So it's, having that community is really important, and it's okay to lean on those supports as you navigate through parenting. I think that's the things that it taught me. The things that I'd wish I'd been taught, it makes me think of the communication in relationships. So I grew up in a time where men didn't talk about their feelings. And so getting into relationships for me, I had to kind of navigate through that and what that looked like. In addition to that, I had to kind of figure out that, it's okay for dads to be vulnerable and talk about what they need and get those supports. And also going further, it's great to be able to model that for my children, what a healthy relationship looks like, and to be asking for help and to be vulnerable.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, it's interesting, that idea, and we do discuss it a lot, that it doesn't have to be a biological dad who's the father figure in a child's life who could, help support them. And we have tons of evidence. In fact, Dad Central just did something, we can do plugs later, but produced something for the Public Health Agency that showed all the positive effects that fathers or father figures can have in the lives of a child and how those outcomes can be better. So to continue that, why don't we go over to Dave? Dave, what are your thoughts?
A few things pop to mind when I see this question. I would say there's two top things that I'll discuss briefly. The first thing was work ethic, I believe, just teaching me the value of hard work. Like he used to knock on my door every morning at 5 o'clock. I grew up on a farm, and there wasn't any discussion around whether or not I could get up at that time, or if I was too tired, or if I just didn't feel like going to work with him. So it's just, I think that instilled me, his just level of calm. There was never any back and forth between us. There was never any arguing. I used to complain an awful lot. I remember we used to be out on the truck delivering grain to farmers and so on. And he'd talk and talk and talk and talk. And I'd be asking him, because I wanted to get home. And I used to just bug him to no end and complain to no end after we got back on the truck, but he never complained back. His calm and poise is something that really stood out for me, and something that I've kind of carried on as a dad myself, because, letting children kind of express their emotions without, condemning them for having those explosive emotions is something really valuable, and I think an integral part of learning or teaching your child how to regulate emotionally. So I was really blessed for that. And just to kind of build on that, I think the communication skills that I've acquired through watching him speak to customers out on the road, just handling negative interactions, the positive interactions, adversity with my mom, adversity with other people that, customers that might have been angry and so on. And he's just so steady. Like, that was the thing that really impressed me a lot. There was never any reactionary type of behavior. And with all that hard work, just the end of the day, that's something that reminds me of, is just the sound of the engine shutting off on the tractor or on the truck, depending on what type of work I was doing. And then walking in from the shed with I always kind of threw his arm around me. Like, it was a bit of a traditional thing. Like, he used to do it on his own. And then as I got bigger, his arm would have to go higher and higher around my shoulder. So I still really think of that and reflect on that, and just try to achieve that as a dad. I'm not as good as my dad was. I try my hardest, but I had two parents and I'm a different person, but those are values that I strive for. Thanks. I guess there's another question. What would I like him to, or what would I like to have had him teach me? I think more just handyman skills. He used to do, like, I did a lot of work, but it wasn't specific to handyman work and fixing things. He used to do a lot of the fixing and repairing and things like that. So I'm not very handy around the house. I kind of wish I had those skills, and so does my wife. Thanks.
Cool, thanks, Dave. Drew, what about men in your life growing up? What did you appreciate? What did you learn, or what would you have liked to have learned?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Great stories. I think we can all relate to some elements of what Jason and Dave shared, I'm sure. But I have two unique. One, I did have my dad, but similar to Jason, my dad was angry. He was harsh, and there were some elements of that. But he still did instill in me some really important values from my dad, who I really, up till 7 is where I was more involved with him. After 7, I wasn't. He wasn't in my life very much. And the one was the power of keeping your name clean. And he'd always say, keep your name clean, right? And the idea of your reputation, your integrity, your character always mattered. And so that was something that I took from my biological dad. That was very important, and it's still internalized for me. And then I had a stepdad who came into my life when I was 10, and I think there are many lessons I could say that what he taught me, very much to Dave, more by his example than necessarily by his words or what he said to me. And I think the biggest thing he taught me is just that state of calm and steadiness. I think of my stepdad as like a rock. Like, he was always there, no matter what happened, no matter how difficult things might have got, how challenging the relationship might have been with my mom. He was always going to be there, and there was never any question. And so I think just that element of, he'll always be there was a very powerful lesson that I've internalized, and I try to model that myself. So in terms of what I wish, I think both of my biological dad and my stepdad, there isn't much discussion about, like Jason said, emotions and recognition of processing emotions in a healthy way, and then being able to communicate those emotions in a way that you can work well with a partner. You can have an understanding. You can also be able to work through challenges and difficulties in a way that's going to bring the relationship closer as opposed to tear it apart. And so I think those are things that would have been valuable to be able to discuss. But again, it was a time when no one was really discussing those things. And culturally, I think we still struggle. Socially, we still struggle with that, even in all that process of vulnerability and authenticity. And so I think that's what I think would, I internalized, and I think, how can I do this more for my kids?
Thanks, Drew. Yeah, I mean, the emotional thing is very hard. I think we all as human beings struggle, sometimes are brilliant, sometimes are terrible, but it's a very difficult thing. But as you said, and I can't remember if it was Dave or Jason mentioned, that how to work through relationship issues with anyone is a critical coping mechanism. And it could even be just with yourself, like being kind to yourself and being, forgiving of yourself, etc. Why don't I go over to Nathan to get your thoughts on that question, what your dad taught you that you really appreciated, or things that you might have liked to have learned.
All right. Y'all can hear me quite fine now. I turned up my input thing. Almost cranked it right up. Sorry about that earlier. Oh man, this is for me, this is a tough question to answer. I was fortunate enough to grow up with both parents in the home. Very loving family. So there's a lot there. I've learned a lot, like everything that I know, everything that, like, even relationship wise, from my parents. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint certain things. But I grew up with my dad in the bush. We've gone out a lot together. All the hunting, the trapping, the fishing. We were out in the land a lot together. I was fortunate enough to know him at his nicer periods. But I remember growing up and watching him and my mom work together on every single thing. I grew up watching the roles and responsibilities of my parents being reversed constantly. Like, there was no roles, no nothing. Like, they weren't designated to do one certain thing. Like, let's say hunting wise, right? If my dad was the hunter, but so was my mom. She was completely able to do that stuff. When it comes to harvesting stuff, my dad taught my mom how to do certain things, harvesting wise, and it was never just one person doing the same job over and over again. Even when it comes to like housework and stuff like that, my dad would do. If my mom was cooking, my dad would clean. If my dad would cook, my mom would clean. It was always like super. It wasn't just set rules and responsibilities in the household. It was just as long as they're helping each other out, right? And I think that's one of the main things that I've watched my dad doing growing up, is that always that support, no matter what, supporting my mother, supporting my family, no matter what it was. And also the community, right? Like, supporting the community. Watching him doing things for the community was probably one of the most beneficial things to me, is how to help, giving that helping hand out to people around you all the time, and not asking for anything in return, just for that, just to support them in that way. And I think that's one thing that really stuck with me growing up to now, is helping the community as much as you can without asking anything in return. And if you do get something in return, not to let it get to your head. And that humility part, right? I think that's another thing that he's really taught me. But just like I said, he's really taught me a lot in life, and the whole relationship aspect, right? Like, to treat your partner with that utmost respect, to support them constantly, the unconditional love. And I think him showing me that stuff, in return, I'm showing that to my partner and my child, to always help them nonstop, right? And help myself as well. It's another thing that he's really stressed out to me growing up on the reserve, is to always help myself first, right? You hear the help yourself before you help others. That's one thing he really drilled in my brain, is to help myself in order to help other people, right? And that's one thing that he took time to do when he was with us. When he had something going on in his head, he'd always reach out for that help, because he had a hard time supporting us as a family if he couldn't support himself, right? So that's one thing that he really stressed out to me, is to help. If you're a helper, help yourself if you want to help other people. Even when I was in social work in college, that's one thing he kept on telling me too. Social workers need the most social working, because we take on other people's pain and struggles, right? We kind of help them ride through it. But never to forget yourself. That's pretty much what he was teaching me, to help others, but to help yourself, and that unconditional love. But yeah, we grew up. I grew up seeing that constantly, so I'll never forget that stuff. I've only seen him drunk once. He went on a week-long binge, and that was probably like the worst and scariest time of my life. He also almost died from a heart attack because of that binge. So that scared me from doing that kind of stuff. But other than that, he was a really straightforward, strong, and he was also emotional, and he wasn't scared to show his emotions and stuff like that, even if they were negative. He yelled at me multiple times throughout my life. Like, I remember him screaming in my face. But one thing that I've noticed, even like growing up, I started to notice it more, that every time he did something like that, he would calm himself down and come back to me and say sorry. We would cry together. My apologies, I didn't mean to do that. And later in life, I kind of started to understand why he would do certain things like that. Like his past life before me and my siblings were around, he was the complete opposite of what I've known him as. He was mean. He was cold-hearted, in and out of jail and stuff like that. And sometimes that would kind of resurface, but he would always, in a way, mend his mistakes and sincere apologies and stuff like that. But he was, always okay to cry in front of us and say that, it's okay for us to show our emotions. And if we make mistakes, fix them. But yeah, like I said, he's taught me so much in life that it's kind of hard to pinpoint just one or two or three of them. One thing I wish he taught me growing up was have to be more financial stuff. We grew up the poor family in my reserve. We were one of the poor families, but we were rich in love. We were very close as a family. We were a very close family unit. We've done things together quite a lot. But I just wish that I would have had the tools of the financial stuff before I went on my own as a teenager. But yeah, I like I said, I think that's probably one of the only things that I wish he would have taught me. Everything else was, I couldn't be more happy with what I've got out of him while he was still alive. And, I still use a lot of his things that he's taught me now. And I share his story quite a lot as well, because that's the impact he's had on me. And yeah, I think that's all I could say right now.
Thanks, Nathan. That's interesting, the things we learn from our fathers or from our elders or from adults around us, and interesting the things you don't learn. Education in general is so important to the lives of children, but there's gaps, like you said, financial literacy. We still don't teach that in school. Like, how do you budget? How much money do you need to make? Should you save money? How should you save money? How can you invest money? And there are people that, are much more fortunate than many that learn all those things, or they don't even need to because they got so much money anyways. But thank you for sharing all that. And interesting too, you mentioned the sort of changing roles of fathers and mothers within the house and how that changes. That's an interesting question, how it was years ago versus how it is now. which kind of segues into our next question, which is, what is one way that you parent the same way your father did? And in what way do you parent differently? So I don't know, why don't we go back to Jason for that one? So how do you parent like your dad did, and how do you parent differently?
So again, I had my grandfather and my uncles, very community-like situation that were the positive male influences in my life. So I think that really emphasized for me the importance of family time, you know, getting together and spending that time together, even extended family. I remember one of the first things my wife said when she met my family is, you know, are all these people really related to you? Because there was just people everywhere. So that kind of, that importance of quality family time, and especially I think now, it's very hard with busy schedules, you know, work and school and extracurricular time. It's really important to carve out that family time. But also I kind of take that one step further and carve out unique time for my children as well. So they get the one-on-one as well. So I get to do things with them that I might not do when it's the whole group. For example, you know, my youngest daughter, she really likes hockey. She was very physically active, and so I get to spend time doing that with her. Versus my other older daughter, who likes to read a lot, likes to do the kind of she's very introspective, just likes to spend time and chat. So they get that kind of that uniqueness. They see that I value their uniqueness. It deepens our relationship, and I get to know them on a personal level, and they see that I value that. So I take that forward as well. Something that I would do differently than my uncles and grandfather is it openly engage in difficult conversations. So I grew up in a very Irish Catholic family, and there were certain topics that we didn't talk about. But again, I have two girls who use those as an example, a preteen and a teen girl. So heading into some really interesting times, you know, so for many years, I've openly engaged in conversations around, you know, pregnancy and puberty and relationships and the dynamics of that. And I think they value that because they know that they can talk to me about anything, for one thing. But also I feel like from my perspective, I offer a different lens on the conversation than their mom might. So I think that's something that I definitely do differently.
Thanks, Jason. Dave, what about you?
I think something that kind of comes to mind is just how my dad has he always kind of allowed me to find my own passion. Like he would expose me to a lot of different things as a child and just kind of supported my interests. So I think he saw the value in me having things I was passionate about. So I mean, I had horses on the farm. I had, you know, chickens, I had pigs. I had dirt bike. We didn't have a lot of money. There was always, you know, arguments in the household about money, and I'm sure a lot of sleepless nights for my parents. Like for any of you on the line that grew up on a small farm, you would empathize with what I'm saying. So I felt like I grew up rich, but we didn't have a lot of money, which was really neat. So I was put into guitar lessons. I was purchased all these instruments. Like we used to, I mean, it was just such a blessing that I had. I was so fortunate. So yeah, and he didn't seem to have any type of influence or there was no pressure as to what I would like and what I wouldn't like. Like he just exposed me to all of it. And if I mentioned something, he would usually make sure it happened. And I was lucky because my mom supported that as well. So, you know, I even had this golf cart that I used to tear around. Like it didn't matter what I wanted, it was always there. But I wouldn't say I was spoiled either, though, because I was working hard, right? I earned what I had, I felt. So I just think that that's something that stands out for me is what he did back then. Something that I do differently than my dad nowadays is just to kind of resort to what I was saying before, is I tend to command respect more out of my children and talk about the importance of respect and how I'm spoken to and how my kids speak to other people or to each other. Whereas my dad didn't do any of that really. He just role modeled that calm. So I'm striving to do more of that, especially as my kids get older. I recognize the importance of kind of standing back and helping to steer, have little debriefs or chats when things are not as tense. So when you have teenage girls, I mean, I'm lucky my girls get along really well and support each other, but they're teenage girls and they're different people. And I have one daughter with a temperament that's completely different than my other daughter, and she has a hard time not exploding a lot of the time or just raising her voice, and that's a trigger for me. And I'm really working hard to keep my capacity as a parent high and just avoid run-ins with her, because I end up raising my voice and it reinforces the type of behavior that she's doing with me, right? So and I know all of you on the line understand how that works. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm striving for. Again, just to reflect on that first question, is just to kind of work more towards just role modeling what I want my girls to develop as they get older. And I think I've improved a lot. It takes a lot of reflection. It takes a lot of investment in myself as far as making sure I've got enough rest, make sure I control stress. Yeah, so, and just to kind of put a little bit of light over everything I just shared, my mom she grew up in a really horrible kind of situation as a child with alcoholism and abuse. And she carried a lot of trauma with her into parenthood. And she wanted to escape where she grew up. So she ended up moving in with my dad when she was very, very young and getting married quite early. So she had a lot of trauma. She still does have a lot of mental health challenges, as I feel is a direct result of her upbringing. So I feel that I've acquired some of the kind of, I guess, some of the outcomes that I've had to challenge myself with over the years have been a result of some stress I was exposed to growing up as well. So I felt like my dad was the buffer for that. And but I still, you're still exposed to it. Still, it definitely still affects you. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. It's interesting because you speak of sort of being the calm in the middle of the storm, and I find myself often I try to play that role, and it works pretty well. But then at some points, between the people around you, your wife, your kids, whatever, I'll just lose it because I'm like, I'm calm. You're yelling, I'm calm. And then you finally lose it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. I mean, it's just a human thing, right? But
yeah.
And I appreciate the deep sharing too about your mom, your family, the growing up stuff. And I love the music bit. Like my kids, I've always loved music, and my parents allowed me to get a drum set when I was a little kid, and I was banging on that thing like crazy in the basement. And when my kids were babies, I had little drums on the floor and they'd bang on them. And it's amazing because to this day now they're actually guitar players and they're good. Like they're so good, it's ridiculous. But it's like a peaceful place for them to go to, and a sort of a grounding place, but also a thing that we share that is amazing and rich. And one of the coolest things I think in life is music, and having your kids play and share, and what bands do you like and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, what sort of went on a big tangent there, but appreciate your thoughts, Dave. Did you have?
No, I appreciate the reflection, Tim. Because now, just to put a bit of closure, we're just chatting on. I exposed my oldest daughter to guitar when she was 7, and she didn't want to listen to me trying to help her with her lessons. So I gave her a few chords to her favorite songs and just let her go on her own path without being involved, without any feedback at all. And now she's songwriting and just like flying, like music is her life, it's her therapy. she went through a couple of years of severe bullying, and she wrote songs about how she felt as an outlet. And she's recently had a boyfriend for a few months who broke up with her, and she wrote some more songs about how that felt. So it's just the value of music, and just kind of planting that seed, and she just kind of flew on that kind of pathway. So a lot of that boils back to how my dad allowed me to get involved in music, and how he kind of navigated that development. So it's pretty, I just feel very fortunate. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Drew, why don't we jump over to you?
Okay, thank you. I have to comment though, Dave. Some of the things you shared just really reminded me. We and I don't mean this as a plug, but we were talking with Trevor Linden as part of the Dead Central Show, our new podcast that we're launching, and he was sharing some of the same things that you were talking about, and just that idea of not pushing your kids into things, right? You think of someone who's playing it. He's talking about, I don't really care if my son plays hockey, and just how we can get overzealous and want to push kids. But when you give them, maybe you plant the seed, and then allow them to their natural interest, curiosity to gravitate, and look what happens. So anyways, I just wanted to acknowledge that story and just say that's really powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And just, sorry, I was just going to support what you were saying. Is I just remember, for those of you who like country music, there's a country music musician, Vince Gill, and I remember how he was telling a story, and his mom didn't want to raise a rich child. She wanted to raise a happy child. So she kind of let him do what he wanted and go in the direction that he wanted to. And he ended up being rich because he was happy and took things to to a high level. So yeah, just kind of resonated with me when you shared that. Thanks.
Cool. So I think that I parent similar to talking about my biological dad, and that he was very skilled. He was a tradesman. In terms of upholstery was his trade, and so he would always bring me along. He would teach me, he would show me, or sometimes I would just watch, and I'd see, and then I'm like, oh, let me try things, and he'd like, oh, he'd give me the tool, and he'd show me how to use it. And so I think I parent similar to that, in that I love getting my kids involved. I love having them with me when I'm doing things, with age appropriateness and all that stuff. But I just really love that aspect of it. I want to see them doing things that I'm doing, and being able to sort of help them explore, but also guide them if the time comes. Because I remember some key things my dad taught me. In terms of my stepdad, I think I parent similar to him in that he's for lack of a better word, he's just really kind. He's just a really kind man, and I think that I bring that same kindness to my parents. At least I want to. I try to bring that very much to my interactions with my children, and to wanting to just help them know and feel that from me. In terms of the way I parent differently, I think that I view my role as dad as the most important role I'll ever have in my life. I feel that the influence that I'll have on my children is going to impact more people in the long run than anything else that I do. And so I invest very heavily in that. And so that means I want to be the best dad that I can be. And that starts with me growing myself, healing myself, learning about myself, and modeling it. So living it first very much is what I work really hard at. And then being able to, at the key moments in my children's life, be able to invest in their overall development, emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually. Those are all critical pieces for me that I want to be as, for lack of a better word, I want to be as complete as possible as a dad. So I think I parent. Now, I'm not saying that my dad or my stepdad didn't do that. I just don't think that, they did it their way, and I'm choosing to do it my way.
Thanks, Drew. Nathan, I kind of almost forget what the question is now, but that's kind of cool, because I like when we get on these, people to speak from the heart. But I guess the question was, how do you parent like your dad, and how do you do it differently?
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing, everybody. That was I could really I don't know what kind of word I'm trying to. I don't know what word I'm trying to figure out here. Wow. My brain has gone to mush right now. Hold on. Let me find out one simple word here.
It resonated. It connected for you.
I connected with your stories. Wow. I grew up the same way. Music really influences so much. The power of music is unbelievable. My parents were both country people, like old country, like Johnny Cash and stuff like that. So there was a period in my life where that's all I would listen to: Johnny Cash, all those other oldie but goldies, like even like Mr. Hank Williams there. Oh, I listened to those all the time. I would walk around and sit at the park all by myself with my Walkman and jam out to a bunch of those old albums. I got a little older, started listening to my siblings' music, heavy metal, death metal, the whole thing. So I flopped over from country to metal and up. And my parents never really told us not to listen to certain kinds of music because it would, they just, like y'all were saying, you know, as long as we were happy with what we were doing. They even bought us instruments, guitars, drum sets. I got a keyboard when I was younger because I got really interested in keyboards. So they would use that musical piece as a way to another way to connect with us. Because my dad was a singer. He used to love playing guitar. He would sing and all that stuff. And my mother too. She wasn't much of like a big music player, but she was a music fan and stuff like that. But yeah, I just kind of I could relate to a lot of the whole musical stuff. And even today, that's the way that I parent is very, very similar to the way that I was taught by my father, you know, the whole close family thingamajig. But it is also a lot different now. I am living in a city. I work, my partner works. So my daughter, well, she's only 2.5, almost 3. But she is in daycare a lot, only because we are working. So that's completely different from the way that I grew up with. But the benefit to that, you know, her social skills are starting to come to play quite a lot now. Something that I had to wait for a long time to socialize with more than a few people at a time. But yeah, that whole one thing that I forgot to mention before is one thing that that I'm doing now that my parents didn't is more culturally based things or spiritually based things. When I mentioned that I grew up in the bush a lot with my dad, that was the cultural piece, right? You know, go hunting, provide for the family, use what you can, don't overdo anything type of deals. That's what he taught me. One thing that I'm learning now is the spiritual aspect of that. Like, you know, the whole tobacco piece, the honoring piece, the ceremony piece, those things that I started picking up in when I moved to Timmins. So that's one thing that I'm doing, that I'm parenting differently, is that I'm introducing ceremony into my daughter's life. My daughter went to, we did her welcome ceremony, walkout ceremony, placenta ceremony for her already. She's been exposed to Sundance meetings and the actual Sundance itself. So she's the first in my family who will be able to say in 10 years from now, I've been going to ceremonies my whole life. So she's the first in my family in quite a long time to who's going to have the ability to say that. So that's one thing that I'm doing very differently from my parents. My parents were Roman Catholic. My grandfather was born again Christian. Little story here. When I was a kid, I asked my grandfather, he didn't have any teeth right now, but at the time, and I asked him, I was like, Grandpa, how do we have no teeth? And my parents told me that his response was, oh, I'm born again. And I didn't understand that joke until now, you know, born again Christian. And I thought he meant that he was like a baby because he had no teeth. So I find that pretty funny now that I'm older. But yeah, my parents taught me to show respect to other people's ways of life. So growing up, I was taught Catholic way. when I was with my grandpa, I was taught the Christian way. And when I started to learn things up myself, I started to learn the spiritual way of like ceremonies and stuff like that. So I was taught at a very young age about respecting other people's points of views, other walks of life, and not to, you know, force anybody to follow a certain way. And you know, I hope to teach that to my daughter when she gets up to a certain age to you know, walk the path that she wants to walk in. It doesn't have to be the same way that I'm doing it, and she doesn't have to do anything cultural. She doesn't have to do it in a spiritual way. She can just do what she wants to do, right? But until then, I'm introducing her into the ceremonial aspect of the spiritual way of life. And one thing that I really like about all these teachings and stuff like that, and when as she's growing up, my partner and I will be able to teach her certain things about life in a spiritual way, in a cultural way that that I find that I think is very beneficial. It would have benefited me quite a lot growing up, you know, identity wise, like to know who I am, what the strengths that I have, and more the bigger picture type of deal. So I'm excited to you know, share these things with her until she decides if she wants to do something else. And if she doesn't want to do something else, that's, you know, I have no problem with it. As long as she's a happy person, as long as she's happy with herself and with life, then I'm happy. It doesn't have to be ceremonial way right now. But yeah, going back to the whole music piece, as you seen earlier, I am a singer, so I use them. She comes with me a lot with this the singing stuff, so she has no problem at home, you know, being loud, and she does mimic me once in a while when I do my singing. She mimics me and stuff like that, and she even has she has her own little tiny drum that I'm teaching her how to use and not to throw around, to be nice to it, to be respectful to it, eh? And when she's older, she'll know that respect piece and other things, you know, not to destroy things and stuff like that. Well, I'm hoping she's gonna, you know, that will stick to her, but sometimes it doesn't, and that's fine. Yeah, so that's the one thing that I do a little differently, is that whole spiritual piece. She gets to go to ceremonies with us, things that I never got to do and I wish I got to do as a kid. She's also exposed to language more than I ever was. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm going with the flow. I have no set in stone things for her until she decides to do things for herself. But for now, it's just, you know, kind of joining us on our journeys, and hopefully it'll impact her in a positive way when she's older. And yeah, going with the flow.
Thanks, Nathan. I mean, I think amazing, everybody on the call, just to be supportive of children and expose them to things and then see which directions they go in. Like your music thing, like as I said, I was drumming all my life from an early age. My kids sort of like the idea of guitar. And when they were, I think, 6 and 8, what did they want for Christmas? They wanted an electric guitar. And my wife was like, that's ridiculous. Like, they don't know how to play a guitar. I'm like, well, yeah, but we could buy a used one and, you know, whatever. And so we bought a used Epiphone for like $150 or something. And it was great. Sure enough, they learned a few chords. I think Dave was saying, like, I don't know how to play guitar. So I said, look, here, watch YouTube. Here's a chord. Here's another chord. Here's a couple songs. And they just ran with it. And now it's such a joy for them. So, I mean, amazing when we can just support our children and, you know, see what direction they want to go in. And I mean, they are the future. So, you know, many of the kids that we're in touch with now and that we're supportive of now will make our world better, I hope, because we've certainly messed it up a lot. All right, so I want to shift gears a bit, and it's a different question that is a fascinating one to me, just because I think it's tied in with policy so much, with the big picture, with the government, but also with society. So our programs now, like CAPC, Community Action Program for Children, is sort of how, you know, that's how the father involvement initiative started. Dad Central got going. Like, that was sort of the seed that led into that, but it is CAPC. And it makes sense because it's kids 0 to 6 who need help and support in the community. But what about prenatally? Because you think, okay, well, CPNP, the Canada Prenatal Nutrition, well, men don't have anything to do with women prenatally or with kids prenatally. And it's like, what do you mean? Of course they do. Like, if you're supportive of mom before she has baby's going to be better. Like, there's so many aspects to it that just make common sense. And yet it's interesting to me that we, on a high level policy, but maybe even as people, haven't made that connection as well as we should. So the question is, what role do dads play in the prenatal period of their child's life? And how is it important? Why don't we jump back in order, because I'm just like that, to Jason.
Thanks, Tim. I just wanted to kind of touch on the music piece, just because I thought that was amazing. I have a great story. So my youngest daughter, a couple of years ago, wanted to learn to do fishing. And I hadn't been fishing in like 25 years. But I kind of had to do this thing where I was like, oh, I guess I better learn to fish again. And we guess we need all the things. So I kind of, it just made me think of kind of like adjusting and being very flexible with what your children want to do. And that's absolutely okay. So getting back to the question, I think this is a really good question, just because I think of the programs that we run here in Peterborough. And I know the guys on the call will talk a lot about some of the, the research piece and things like that, and some of those other things. But what I've seen in the programs that we've run is there's still some dads out there that don't know the impact that they have, and they don't know the role that they have in the prenatal period, and they see themselves heading into that situation as more of the support, as kind of like an add-on to the relationship piece. And I mean, we know from research of how important dads are, positive father involvement is in the child's development for lifelong, from an academic standpoint, from a social standpoint, and so on. But I think the part I want to touch on is kind of that symbiotic relationship piece for me, is that it also impacts dads as well in that in becoming a dad. And I think that's really important in terms of, just where dad's trajectory ends up going in a positive way as well. And I think for me, it really highlights the importance of a need for a continuous conversation, to engage dads in that conversation around how important they are. And so that's what I've tried to do, is just have those conversations, and ask dads directly, where do you see your role in this situation? And do you realize the importance of that? So, yeah.
Thanks, Jason. I was just trying to unmute. Why don't we jump over to Dave? How do you see the prenatal role of men and fathers?
Thanks, Tim. So I do have kind of 3 items that I would just want to address. I won't go into too much detail, but a couple things that pop to mind here are being physically available, obviously, to your partner, and emotionally available as well. And I think that's maybe part of, an missed opportunity for a lot of dads in the prenatal period, is just, connecting with your partner at an emotional level, understanding, how hard pregnancy is or can be, and just meeting them at that level, because it's one thing to, to help out around the house and things, and all that's very important. But I think meeting them at an emotional level and striving to be emotionally available as much as possible to your partner can have huge dividends for the outcome of the pregnancy. I also see it as an opportunity to educate dads a lot, because I feel that the prenatal period is the most receptive period for a lot of dads, and a good opportunity because they're not as sleep deprived and as stressed after as they are when the baby's born. So I think really educating the dads around the parenting information and tips and so on, and just support around common areas of stress for new dads, I think getting that across to them in the prenatal period is a good idea. I also kind of reflect on some research that I'm well aware of, is one of the huge predictors of father involvement is confidence in parenting. So I think the more confident a dad feels when the baby's born, the more involved he'll be, the more hands-on he'll be. So I see that as a huge role for us to play within that prenatal period. Also, something that might be a good opportunity to kind of look at is, I feel that as practitioners, we often focus a lot on the parenting, direct parenting of the child. But I think if we don't look at the impact of family dynamics on a child's outcome, then we're missing a bit of an opportunity there. So I think it might be an opportune time as well to address the positive impacts that both parents can have on their child by keeping things as positive within the family dynamic and the relationship and whatnot. Because you can be a really great parent and provide your child all the support in the world and do everything that, textbook as far as caring for them and stimulating them and responding to their needs and so on. But if they're growing up in an environment where there's a lot of toxic stress, then that can counteract a lot of the good things we're doing as parents. So I think talking about that with families can be really good use of good return on our investment, I guess you could say. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, it's weird. I really feel like this is an area that should expand. Like, I think CPNP programming should include dads, should include fathers, because as you said, you're setting the stage for what's to come. And it's at a time where, you don't have the baby there. So both mom and dad are able to hear things, hopefully be receptive to things, learn about things, and realize the profound impact they can have over the life of that child. And, for people that are in awful situations or tough situations socially, they need more support at that stage than ever. And, imagine if you had that support prenatally, then the kid comes and you're like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. Maybe you then at least have some contacts, some peer support, or maybe they know Dave Elder from that prenatal thing and they can say, hey, I'm struggling here. I need help. I don't know what to do. Versus just saying, don't need dads before the baby. Okay, here's the baby. This is a mess. What do I do? And you're starting already from a sort of a deficit.
We sometimes, those are a great way to frame it. And I think we sometimes assume a lot that families know about the impacts of like they're aware of the potential harm that they can cause their children. And we sometimes, if we're working in the field, I think it's second nature sometimes for us to assume that they know what's good, what's bad. And, that's not always the case. And I also like to focus a lot on the whole concept of parent capacity and helping a child be the best version of themselves. Help the parent be the best version of themselves that they can be. And that's come up in discussions at the Dad Central Provincial Steering Committee table as well recently. I think we want to move away from trying to have parents or have dads be this ideal dad and just help them kind of reflect on what's going well and what's not going well. What do they want to work on? And promoting a lot of reflection, a lot of social connectedness, and striving to have a happy dad. Because I think at the end of the day, kids don't need, perfect parents, but if the parents are happy, that's going to transcend so many things that we do as parents, as far as patience level, as far as our engagement, our social dynamics within the household. So I think that's well said, Tim, and I just want to support that. Thanks.
Well, it's interesting. I really would love to influence policy and change things a bit. It's kind of like having a firefighter completely untrained, and then there's a fire. Okay, go, there's a fire. Like, clearly that firefighter should know how to do all kinds of things, carry a ladder, carry the hose, operate a fire extinguisher, how to work together, all those things before the fire. Anyways, Drew, what are you thinking about the prenatal period?
Oh, thanks, Tim. I think of it like building a house. You always start with the foundation. And I think the prenatal period is the time to build the right foundation. And think of when you have a structure that's built on a faulty foundation, what happens over time? Cracks, imperfections, sometimes in disastrous cases, it crumbles. And so when you say, I think what's the question is, what's the role? Sorry, what's the role dads play in the prenatal period? Well, the role is to begin to build the right foundation. And so when in one of our resources involved, the Involved Fathers booklet, it talks about these 6 roles that every kid, and those roles start with what do children need. And so children need it right from the beginning. I'll just briefly touch on those 6 roles. So they need provision, they need interaction, they need nurturing, they need affection, they need responsibility, they need commitment that's what they need, right? And so and that's how we describe it. So, and that will look different for every dad and every relationship. So there's the freedom and flexibility, but that's what children need. And so it's gonna, as children and through the perinatal period as they evolve, I think that those things, as long as there's an awareness, we talked on educating, dads are more receptive and open in this period of time. So we've got opportunity. Building the partnership with the mom is so crucial at that period of time. So I think the role is to build the right foundation. And I think it's very critical, very important to be able to do it in that period of time, which so that the house that's going to be built over time is going to stand firm and strong, as opposed to eventually crumble. So I think it's so critical.
And we have had some great analogies. I like the house, the foundation one. I'm going to need all you guys and the smart people that are on this call to help me influence government and expand this policy, support fathers more in CAPC and CPNP, but in other ways. Like I know some of us who are aware of the work that the Quebec group does, the paternization of, I can't get that word right ever, what it is. I don't know if you can do it quick, Drew, but they get so much funding in Quebec. It's awesome for dad's work because it's more a European model where they're like, yeah, let's support fathers. That's a great thing. And yet federally, we don't do nearly enough. And I think this conversation about prenatal is so important because, yeah, you are building the foundation of a house. So let's work with fathers. Let's work with mothers before the kid's there as well as after. Nathan, what you thinking about the prenatal period?
Oh man, thank you. Y'all said really good points. I'm gonna take it back to the super duper simple part, presence. For me, when my partner was pregnant, I made my presence around her and baby much more than ever. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the ceremonial and spiritual thing once again. One thing that I was taught in the past few years about pregnancy, that's our first ceremony that we're all in. All of us, each and every single one of us in life was introduced into the ceremony. It's the parent connection, the parent and the child connection. We call it the mother and child connection, but it's actually the parent and child connection. When the baby's in the womb, you know, the baby can still hear us and feel us when we're around. Our presence, especially the mother, of course, because that's a 24/7 presence. But as a father, we're our presence is felt too by that child. And for us, the ceremony that we're told to do when the baby's in the womb is just to be there to talk to that belly. You know, we've all done it. We've rubbed the belly. You know, we've talked to that baby. Some of us even sing to the baby, like sing our favorite songs. You know, say goodnight songs to the baby, and all that. All that good stuff, right? And for us, that's a ceremony. That's that connection between you and the baby as a father and as a mother. even as a grandparent, you know, you start talking to that belly, you know, saying beautiful things, you know, acknowledging the baby, telling that baby that you love he or she already, you know, I love you, I can't wait to meet you, and we're gonna do so much things, you know, you're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, you know, I'm gonna make sure that your life, um, your life will be as okay as we can make it, you know, like start introducing those things while the baby's in the womb. So I think that is one of the most important things to do at the prenatal period, is that presence, whether if it's talking, singing, and yeah, for the baby. Now, for the mother, the most important thing that we can do as a father for the mother is that support. And it's as simple as that support, whether if it's, you know, the awesome house analogy was perfect. I really love that that whole thing. You know, I feel like I think I'm going to steal that from you. But you know, that support, right? You know, we're, as men, as fathers, we're not forced, but we're told to do so much things for the house, you know, the plan, all that stuff. But we also got to worry about our partners as they're pregnant. They're fully capable of doing everything themselves, but they shouldn't have to. You know, baby is number one, you know, the house, the protection of the house. We got to do the other parts, you know, that support part, you know, the whole, the emotional support. That is a big one, you know, that mental support. That's another really big one. You know, you got to support them myself when my partner was pregnant. That's the role I was completely playing, right? You know, making sure she had everything that she wanted and needed. The pregnancy cravings, those were intense. You know, made sure that she was happy as much as she can, as well as making myself happy, right? And you know, making sure that home was a home. And to build up those future things too, like Drew was mentioning, you know, as well as doing that stuff as well. It's also very important for us as the partner to make sure our own mental health and our own emotional state is as good as well. So, you know, that, you know, making sure that we have the help as we can. But yeah, I think one of the more important roles for us as at the prenatal stage is just to be that support person, you know, just to be there. And yeah, that's personally for me, that's that's what I think. But like those other things are very important as well. Like they are very, very important. For myself, I when my partner got pregnant, I didn't really have a whole lot of people telling me to, you know, start planning this, start to do that. I wish I had people to. I know what to expect now, but we kind of hit the ground running there with Amber. Before I had Amber, I'd never changed a diaper once. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to touch it. Now I'm pretty much that person. I do it all the time. I change the diapers all the time. That's me. It's not that my partner doesn't like to do it. I'm just faster at it. But yeah, that's my role. I'm the diaper changer. I'm also the napper, the sleeper. I put my child down to bed every single night, wake her up every single morning. That's my role. That's we work with our strengths, my partner and I. I wake up a lot more faster than she does. I could wake up like that, although for her it takes her at least an hour or so. So when baby wakes up, I'm the one that wakes her up, only because I have an easier time waking up. So we work with our strengths. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of going off track here, like completely. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. You're doing great, Nathan. And I too am the diaper changer. I changed hundreds of diapers, and probably same deal. Actually, I did take care of kids a bit before I had kids, but I got to be so good at putting on diapers, and I'm like, oh, the thing ripped, and I'm like, you know what? Duct tape, man. I'm not throwing out this diaper. That's like 50 cents or whatever. Piece of duct tape, that'll work. Did it many times. And I don't know, like, it's such an incredible conversation. And I really appreciate everybody, all of you guys on the panel, but also everybody attending this session. And I want to get to another question, but we may have to hold it till next year. I don't know. I thought perhaps we could check in with Sydney to see where that famous whiteboard is at, and if there's any stuff on there we should see, and if we should give away a couple books. And by the way, I saw in the chat, great question about the 6 hot tips from Drew, and all that stuff is available at dadcentral.ca. There's a lot of good resources there that have been developed over time that are there. Anyways, Sydney, why don't I turn it over to you for a sec?
Oh, sure. Oh, such a great conversation. Maybe before I go to the whiteboard, we do have, I pulled out two questions. Well, Blanca suggested one. Oh, well, it was going to be about the duct tape. So the first trivia question in terms of answering in the chat is, what did Tim suggest we could use duct tape for? So the first person to put that in the chat will win a copy of 24-Hour Cribside Assistance. And so I'm going to base it on what comes up first in my chat. And well, it was Florence. So Florence, I'm going to make sure to write this down. Florence wins a copy of the 24-Hour Cribside Assistance. That's awesome. And Blanca, you had another question. Did you want to ask it?
Sure. How many grandchildren does Jason have? I can't believe you're a grandfather. Oh, Don wins.
Don wins?
Wants 4-0. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Excellent.
It just blows my mind that you're a granddad to 4 kids. That's amazing.
Much too young to be a granddad, I would say. And I saw in the chat, Florence, thanks Florence for my the duct tape thing. Glad you liked it. And I saw Florence is from Inwashin Lodge, does a lot of great work in Ottawa. And I saw something in the chat. It seemed like maybe you do something with Dave Elder. I'm not sure. Maybe I just read that thread wrong, or maybe you just enjoyed what Dave said.
No, we actually, Dave and I did a lot of parenting sessions together, and then we did a lot of the crisis work together. So over the last couple of years of COVID, we haven't had any contact. And now I'm actually starting at 3 o'clock to do a mothers and fathers parenting circle. So definitely Dave will be looking to you for some input. And for Drew and for Dad Central, I just wanted to know if you guys, because I'm referring all my men to you, all my dads that want to do better, that want some help and support. I'm like, go to Dad Central. They're awesome. They have tips. They have information. But I'm also wondering if you have one of these discussions where dads can just sit and have a circle and talk about things that matter online. And I think that would be incredible. Does that exist? And how can I refer them to you?
Thank you for the question, Florence. That is what we're working on. And so very soon, we'd love to present that opportunity and give that space for dads to come together and have some facilitated conversations. So stay tuned. Keep referring people to Dad Central, and keep paying attention to what we're doing.
And I think it'd be great for everybody to, well, I guess, follow Dad Central, or you can sign up for their email blasts, and Sydney can help keep people connected. She does a great job announcing some of the events too, but definitely good to be plugged into Dad Central and the work that is going on with positive father involvement.
Absolutely. Now we have 3 more copies of 24-Hour Cribside Assistance to give away. And I thought I would tap into our guest panelists and just checking Dave, Drew, and Nathan. Do you have access to the board? And the quest would be for you to take a look at all the different sort of images that people have shared kind of reflecting our topic today around dad sayings and just the role of dads. And you can see at the top I've got, and maybe I'll just screen share for a moment. So here are all the images, and we've got 3 movable prize cups here. And so Nathan, Drew, and Dave, if you have access, feel free to take a look at, some of the images and jokes people have posted, and take one of the prize cups and pull it to one of the images that you think should win a prize today. Does that make sense in terms of a process? Okay. I know there's a lot to look at there, so feel free to take a moment and check things out. And then once those images have been chosen, we'll see who posted them.
Sydney, what were the criteria for the images? Or
well, the inspiration was at the top. There's a list of dad's favorite sayings, and it could choose one of them. So it turned out to be pretty broad, actually, just around fathers' roles or dad jokes.
So are we only picking one? Or I see
That's
three,
right. Drew picks one, Dave picks one, and Nathan picks one. And I've got these 3 prize cups at the top. And you can either tell me where to put the prize cup, or just grab the prize cup yourself and put it on the one that you choose.
This is big responsibility.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
I'm glad she didn't ask me, because I'd probably have trouble navigating.
I want to pick 3 of them, but that's okay.
And by the way, the new dad manual is all new and improved. Recently done. We recently translated it, so it is a spanking new and updated resource.
Awesome.
So,
and if either of you are having trouble sort of moving the cup around or anything, you just let me know.
All right, let me switch out of this. Now, I don't like only being able to choose one, but okay. I'll go with my default. Yeah, okay.
And while our judges are choosing, I want to remind everybody that there is a survey, and I'll put the link in the chat once we wrap this up, but you can also, I think, click on the event survey link at the left, and that should take you there. All right, so who has chosen?
I chose, but I want to give honorable mention to the picture of the dad asleep with the kids in the car.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Cool. That is cool. What have you chosen, Drew?
7 Rules of Life. Go with the inspiration.
So where was that? The 7 Rules of Life. Okay. And so who put that? Who contributed 7 Rules of Life?
I did. Sophia.
Oh, congratulations, Sophia.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks for participating. I'll follow up by email.
Thank you very much.
Dave, have you chosen?
For some reason, I wasn't able to go back to the screen that I had opened from the link, but I have chosen one. I like the bottom right. All fixed set patterns are incapable of adaptability, where I think the truth is outside of all fixed patterns. Really, really rich.
All right, I've moved a cup there, and thank you, Dave. So who put the Bruce Lee quote, "All fixed set patterns"?
I did. It's Sophia.
Did?
I'm playing for my partners. So I have 7 partners. So they would love that. So I can share it.
That is awesome. Well, Dave, did you have a second choice so we can spread the prizes around?
Sure. The one with the sleeping in the car, I like that one.
Oh, right. Yeah. Who posted the dad sleeping in the car?
That was me, Sherry.
Sherry Beaton. Congratulations, Sherry. Awesome.
Thank you.
And finally, Nathan, did you make a choice?
I did. I went classic.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. Hi, hungry. I'm dead.
Where was that?
That one always cracks me up. It's right in the middle there, the big one. I know there's a small one.
Oh, hey, hungry. I'm dad. I'm hungry. Cool. Yes. So there are 2 of them. Did 2 people put that one, or who put that one?
It's Dawn. I did, but I already won. So if someone else did, that's fine.
Anybody else? Well, maybe you might get to make a second choice here, Nathan.
Sorry.
Oh, Drew, did you?
I was just gonna say I actually really like the kids in the bathtub with the crayon all over the tiles. That's also pretty funny.
Yeah, I was about to say that one too.
I'm not seeing it, but who posted it?
Here, I'll move the thing right here.
Oh yes, that's a scene from that old Michael Keaton movie, right? When he was Mr. Mom. That's from the 80s.
It's fun too when you just let kids go. Like, you know, you don't, it's like the Bruce Lee thing. You know, because as an adult, you're like, okay, here's the patterns. Here's what you should do. Don't do this, do that. Kids are like, well, can we do this? And you're thinking, that's crazy. Okay, fine, let's do it.
So who posted the picture of the
kids in the bathtub with the crayon?
Yeah.
That was me, Shannon. Mr. Mom.
Shannon?
Yeah.
Your last name, Shannon?
Auger.
Okay.
I think there's definitely something to be said for allowing your children to kind of free reign to explore and, you know, tap into their inner natural curiosity, right? So I think that's a great one.
Yeah, try to keep them safe, obviously, but let them, because the amazing thing is, as a old person, these kids do stuff and you're like, wow, that is amazing.
All right. Well, that is all that we have for giveaways. So I'd like to hand it back to you, Tim, to kind of wrap things up.
Well, yeah, we are a couple minutes over, and I know everybody's busy, but I really appreciate Dave, Jason, Drew, Nathan for coming on and for sharing your stories. I appreciate everybody who's on the call for the work you do with families, with fathers. And obviously you're on this call, so you're keeping fathers in mind, which is great because they can make the lives of kids better. And thank you to Sydney and Blanca for setting this up for the second year in a row, because it's great to share that opportunity and to you know, celebrate the men in the lives of kids. I don't know. I have no other profound words than that. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything, but I think that's a wrap, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim, for hosting us and guiding the conversation, and for our panelists for giving of their time and sharing of their insights, and Nathan for drumming us in. That was wonderful. And thanks to everybody for coming and joining and listening and being in community together. So wishing you all a wonderful rest of the day, and look forward to running into you again soon. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.